Hey everyone, What If Fan here, bringing you another exciting part of What If Reborn as Gohan in future timeline. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name in the description below. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 31. It's a little ugly, but it's true that his fighting power is now 10 times stronger. Just looking at the big swaying tails on his lower body made Gohan's scalp tingle. Fortunately, there were not many people on Paozu Mountain in the middle of the night. Otherwise, it would be pure social death. Roar, roar. Gohan roared twice like King Kong, pounding his chest with both hands, like a lunatic. It was time to enjoy the moment. But after just a few poundings, Gohan's expression became serious. He had turned into a black-haired great ape tonight, not for fun, but for other purposes. The huge black-haired great ape looked up at the moon, clenched his fists tightly, and then roared loudly. Ah! The surging airwaves rippled out from the black great ape as the center, rushing in all directions. The clouds in the sky rolled up. In an instant, the wind blew back, and the surrounding forests made rustling sounds. Then, the whole earth began to tremble gently. Gohan's breath rose wildly, and his black fur flashed with a metallic luster and began to turn golden. At the same time, in the West Capital, at Capsule Corp, Trunks suddenly woke up from his sleep, and then his face filled with horror. Ki, such a strong ki rushed towards him. Is this Gohan's ki? What happened? This ki is too powerful. He suddenly jumped out of bed, put on his clothes, and rushed out. Deep in the mountains somewhere. No. 16, who was planting trees at night, turned his head and looked in the direction of Paozu Mountain in East City. Gohan, such strong power. After saying that, he was silent for a while, and then continued to bury his head in planting trees. As if nothing had anything to do with him. In the advanced plane of the Dragon Ball world. The holy land of the gods, planet Kaioshin. Supreme Kaioshin suddenly raised his head, his pupils contracting rapidly, revealing a shocked expression. Kibito noticed the strange changes in Supreme Kai, so he asked, Supreme Kai, what's wrong? A drop of sweat fell from Supreme Kai's forehead, and then he said, a very strong ki suddenly erupted. What? Ki? Kibito's eyes widened instantly because after what Supreme Kai said, he also felt a powerful and heaven-defying aura coming from the mortal world to the Holy Land. His face was full of disbelief, and he said in shock, how is it possible? There is actually a ki that can be transmitted to the Holy Land. Who is this person? Then, Supreme Kai and Kibito looked at each other, and both had a terrible thought in their hearts. Could it be? Could it be Majin Buu? Isn't this the direction where Majin Buu is sealed? Oh my god, Majin Buu has awakened? No. Supreme Kai shook his head and continued, this aura is not the aura of Majin Buu. I remember that Majin Buu's aura was not like this. Moreover, this aura is even stronger than that of Majin Buu. Who is this person? The expression of Supreme Kai kept changing, which was very interesting. Then he said to Kibito, let's go to the mortal world and take a look. Yes, Supreme Kai Shin. Kibito replied, raised his hand and pressed it on the shoulder of Supreme Kai Shin, and then, whoosh, the two of them disappeared in an instant. On Paozu Mountain, Gohan had turned into a golden great ape with golden fur. His golden aura was surging, and his invincible aura spread throughout the 4 galaxies. Super Saiyan Great Ape. This is the transformation into a Super Saiyan again based on the Great Ape. Combat Power x10x50. 500 times increase. Feeling the overwhelming power in his body, Gohan also became excited. He remembered it clearly. The increase of Super Saiyan 3 was only 400 times the normal state. But now, this form has increased to 500 times. It is 100 times more. Although he had become an extremely ugly great ape and his speed had decreased, his strength was incredibly strong. Gohan murmured, I don't know if I can make further transformations. If I can become Super Saiyan 2, then it will increase to 1000 times. Hiss, it's terrible. Gohan took a breath of cold air. He gathered his strength and prepared to transform into Super Saiyan 2. Aha! Buzz. The thick golden tail trembled, and Gohan's fur stood on end as if he had been electrocuted. He felt numb all over, but his strength did not increase significantly. What was going on? At this moment, a figure fell from the sky. It was Trunks. Trunks stared at Gohan, who had turned into a golden great ape, in amazement. He said in astonishment, "Brother Gohan? How did you become like this?" This was the first time he saw Gohan turned into a great ape. If it weren't for the familiar aura emanating from Gohan, Trunks would not have recognized him. Isn't this change too big? Before Gohan could answer him, Trunks suddenly realized, the full moon, it's the full moon, right? As he said that, he looked up at the sky. Well. Gohan swallowed back the explanation that he was about to say. At the same time, two figures flashed out of thin air and appeared not far from them. Supreme Kai and Kibito had also arrived. Although there was no aura fluctuation on their bodies, Gohan's eyes were now very sharp. When they appeared, Gohan had already noticed their arrival. Then, he looked over. Supreme Kai and Kibito were suddenly stared at by a pair of blood-red eyes as big as lanterns, and they were so scared that they took a big step back. Perhaps they felt that this was undermining the majesty of God, so the two of them took a step back and stopped forcibly. Kibito stood in front of Supreme Kai, acting to protect Supreme Kai, and frowned, "Lord Supreme Kai, what race is this?" Supreme Kai racked his brains for a few seconds, and said in a deep voice, "If I'm not mistaken, this is a Saiyan, a fighting race." At this moment, a violent roar interrupted their conversation. Ah! Trunks' body deformed wildly, and then also turned into a huge black-furred great ape. Now in front of the Supreme Kai was a golden great ape and a black-furred great ape. Both great apes were very intimidating. Kibito's hand was on the Supreme Kai, as if he was ready to teleport away at any time. The two of them were in a tacit understanding, and at the same time, they swallowed their saliva and stared at Gohan and Trunks without saying a word. Gohan also looked at Trunks, who had also turned into a great ape, vigilantly. He was not sure whether Trunks could remain rational after turning into a great ape. If Trunks really went crazy, Gohan would have to contain him. At this moment, the black-furred great ape Trunks turned his head and looked at Gohan. Trunks said, "Brother Gohan, I seem to have turned into an ape too, but the color is a little different from yours." Hearing Trunks' words, Gohan breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he didn't have to do anything toward Trunks. Gohan laughed and said, "Ha, congratulations, Trunks. You can still retain your sanity after becoming a great ape. You are worthy of being the bloodline of the Saiyan royal family. Well, the legacy is also quite good. Let's get out of here quickly. There are two perverts spying on us over there. It's giving me the creeps." Chapter 32. The two great apes of different colors slipped away in an instant, leaving Supreme Kai and Kibito disheveled in the wind. Looking in the direction the great apes had left, Kibito asked, "Lord Supreme Kai, what should we do now?" Supreme Kai Shin replied, "I heard that Saiyans lose their minds after transforming into great apes, but the two of them can actually communicate, which shows that they are not as simple as ordinary Saiyans." Kibito asked, "If they are not ordinary Saiyans, then what else could they be?" Supreme Kai answered, "It is possible that they are Saiyans with the blood of the Saiyan royal family. As far as I know, planet Vegeta, where the Saiyans lived, was destroyed by Frieza decades ago. Only a few Saiyans escaped this disaster because they were on missions outside, including Saiyan Prince Vegeta. These two Saiyans are most likely the descendants of Prince Vegeta." Kibito said again, "But why do Saiyans have such terrible power? The ki of the golden ape just now was so terrible. I always felt that he could crush me to death with just one finger." Supreme Kai explained, "Saiyans are a rare fighting race in the universe. It is said that they can transform into the legendary warrior Super Saiyan. Frieza destroyed planet Vegeta because he was afraid of the appearance of Super Saiyans. But later, about 15 years ago, Frieza was killed by a Saiyan named Goku. This Goku was the genius warrior who could transform into the legendary warrior, Super Saiyan. And this Goku was the scion who was exiled to Earth when he was a child. This planet is Earth, which means that even if the two giant apes just now were not Goku and Vegeta, they must have a close relationship with them. I never thought that the scions are so strong now. I am really a frog in a well. Supreme Kai said a lot, then sighed and lowered his head. Kibito quickly said, Supreme Kai, please don't say that. No matter how strong the scions are, they are still mortals. Supreme Kai, you are the greatest god in the universe. Having said that, I am a useless god, Supreme Kai continued. Kibito simply changed the subject, Lord Supreme Kai, what should we do now? Continue to follow them? Supreme Kai thought for a moment, shook his head, and said, forget it, they obviously didn't want us to see them, so they left. If we follow them, it will cause their anger. I can feel that they have no ill will towards us, they are friends, not enemies, so we should try not to provoke them. Kibito, let's go see Majin Buu's sealed egg. It's been tens of thousands of years since we last saw it. Yes, Supreme Kai Shin. Kibito nodded and put his hand on Supreme Kai's shoulder again. The two of them disappeared in an instant. In a hidden deep valley. Gohan and Trunks, who had returned to their human forms, swam in the river, splashing water everywhere. After swimming, they went ashore and put on their highly elastic combat suits, then each caught a huge crocodile, gutted it, and roasted it over the fire. After turning into great apes, they were in urgent need of nutrition. Within half an hour, the fragrant crocodile meat attracted many little animals. The two brothers tore off some pieces of meat and threw them to the animals. The rest all went into their stomachs. They patted their bulging stomachs and sat on a big rock. Trunks touched his stomach and sighed, it's so comfortable to be full. I think there should be nothing happier than eating. Gohan clapped his hands and stood up, since we are full, let's continue the experiment. Okay, Oklahoma, Trunks replied. Then, the two flew out of the valley and came to an open grassland. They first transformed into Super Saiyan with a boom, and then looked up at the moon in the sky. Boom boom. Boom. The heartbeat, like a war drum, sounded, and the two brothers turned into golden great apes again. But unlike last time, there was no need to worry about exposure this time. Because of the suit Bulma made. The strong elasticity is really beyond words. Even if they turn into 25-meter great apes, it is still comfortable and convenient for them to wear, without any impact at all. The quality is simply unbeatable. He. Gohan and Trunks looked at each other, and then they fought each other. Suddenly, sand and rocks flew everywhere, and the wind blew violently. After fighting for a while, they stopped. Gohan said, sure enough, no matter whether you become a Super Saiyan or an ape first, the final combat power is the same, and it is also a 500-fold increase. Moreover, the speed after the transformation was not affected at all, and it was much faster than when I became Super Saiyan 2. At the same time, Gohan made a deeper comparison between this state and Super Saiyan 3 in his mind. The increase of Super Saiyan 3 is 400 times. And the increase of Great Ape Super Saiyan is 500 times. In this regard, the Great Ape Super Saiyan is obviously better. As for speed, although the speed of Great Ape Super Saiyan is much faster than Super Saiyan 2, it should not be as fast as Super Saiyan 3. So Super Saiyan 3 is faster in terms of speed. As for endurance, the consumption of Great Ape Super Saiyan is not much, and there is not much difference from Super Saiyan 2, and the cost performance is very high. Thinking of Goku's Super Saiyan 3 with amazing stamina leakage, Gohan has reason to believe that Great Ape Super Saiyan can beat it in this regard. Of course, it is not ruled out that Goku's Super Saiyan 3 is not yet mastered thoroughly, so the consumption of stamina and energy is so amazing. Regarding this point, Gohan will wait and see. As for defense, there is nothing to say. The skin of the Great Ape Super Saiyan is thick and tough, and its defense has reached an incredible level. The body of Super Saiyan 3 is simply out of reach. However, the shortcomings of the Great Ape Super Saiyan are also obvious. Speed and appearance are one aspect. The main thing is that it needs the blue wave light generated by the full moon to transform. Although Bulma was able to create equipment that produced more than 1,700,000 blue wave light in GT, it is obvious that such conditions are not available now. But now he can tell Bulma about this idea and let her make it in advance. In addition, there is another way to solve this problem, which is the Saiyan secret technique, artificial full moon. Vegeta can use his own energy and oxygen to create an artificial full moon. Although this skill will extract part of the user's ki, the effect is no different from the natural full moon. It's just that Gohan and Trunks don't know how to do it. So this is also one of the shortcomings. Trunks asked, "Brother Gohan, can you transform into Super Saiyan 2 based on the Great Ape?" Gohan said helplessly, "I've tried it, but it doesn't work. At least I can't transform into Super Saiyan 2 at the moment. It may be because my foundation is not solid enough now." Trunks said, "Why don't you transform into Super Saiyan 2 first and then transform into the ape?" Gohan said, "I can try, but I have a hunch that it will probably not work." Sure enough, after removing the ape transformation, Gohan first transformed into Super Saiyan 2, then looked up at the full moon and tried to transform. But that familiar feeling appeared again. After his eyes received the blue wave light, his tail trembled as if he had been electrocuted. Then his whole body was numb. Although his heart beat faster and his blood boiled, he did not successfully transform into a golden great ape 2, and his combat power did not increase significantly. Transformation failed. Chapter 33. There is a saying in the memory of the previous life. When the golden great ape regains his sanity and bears the power of the great ape in a human body, that is the day when Super Saiyan 4 appears. But now, Gohan is in this state. Although he is in a sober state, he cannot restore his human body in the form of the golden great ape and become Super Saiyan 4. He always feels that something is missing. So the transformation failed. Gohan was not discouraged and thought it was normal. He has only been reborn for a short time, and there is still a long way to go in the future. Nothing can be achieved overnight, and he cannot reach the top of the universe in one day. An hour later, Gohan and Trunks regained their human forms again. They restrained themselves from looking at the full moon in the sky, otherwise, they would have to go through a new round of transformation, and they would not sleep tonight. After tossing and turning for half the night, the two were exhausted. Trunks simply didn't want to go back and planned to stay at Gohan's house for the night. The two brothers rubbed their eyes and returned to the door of their house. At this time, the Supreme Kai Kibito, who had just disappeared, appeared out of thin air again. Trunks looked at the two strange guys vigilantly and quietly clenched his fists, ready to beat them up. Gohan didn't show any surprise except for yawning. Because he had expected that Supreme Kai and Kibito would come back again. Supreme Kai was afraid that Gohan would drive them away as soon as he saw them, so he spoke hurriedly when he appeared. "I'm sorry to bother you two. I'm the Supreme Kai of the universe. I don't have any ill intentions. I just want to make friends with you, is that okay?" Seeing the dignified Supreme Kai being so humble, Kibito felt a little unhappy, but he could do nothing about it. Of course, Gohan knew who the Supreme Kai was. The Supreme Kai's appearance and clothing were so recognizable that it was difficult not to recognize him. Gohan glanced at him, yawned, and said, "Oh, I see. It's just that I'm too sleepy today. Let's talk about it tomorrow." Sending him away just like that? Kibito was shocked. Even the Supreme Kai has revealed his identity. "You?" Supreme Kai quickly stopped Kibito and said with a smile, "Well, you guys take a rest first. We'll come back tomorrow." "Don't come too early, come back in the afternoon," Gohan said. "Good." Supreme Kai pulled Kibito and left quickly, watching the two disappear in an instant. Trunks, who still didn't understand the situation, asked Gohan, "Brother Gohan, who are these two people? Didn't he just say that?" "Supreme Kai," Gohan said. "God? Is it the same as Denden-san?" Trunks asked. "Trunks, I'm really sleepy. Let's talk tomorrow," Gohan said, ignoring him, and walked into the bedroom. Without even taking off his clothes, he fell asleep. Whose position is greater? Trunks was still wondering whether it was Kami or the Supreme Kai. The Supreme Kai sat in silence for a while, then said to Kibito, Kibito, go check what has happened on Earth in these years. Also, check who those two scions are. Yes, Supreme Kai. Kibito took the order and left. The next day, Gohan didn't wake up until 8 in the morning. When he woke up, he found Trunks still sleeping on the sofa. Gohan walked out and kicked him awake. Why don't you go to the bedroom to sleep? Is it more comfortable to sleep on the sofa? Trunks rubbed his sleepy eyes and was stunned for several seconds before saying, I was thinking about something last night and fell asleep here. Thinking about something? What were you thinking about? Gohan asked curiously. I was wondering who was greater, Kami or the Supreme Kai. I've been thinking about it all night. Until now, Trunks still hasn't figured out who is greater. Supreme Kai is greater than Kami, Gohan gave him the answer. Really? I thought Dend was greater. Don't think about it, go wash up quickly. Gohan urged him to wash up. Then the two of them found something to eat and flew back to Capsule Corp. After arriving at Capsule Corp, the first thing Gohan did was to ask Bulma to make a device to launch the Blue's Wave Beam. Bulma had no idea what the Blue's Wave Beam was and was completely confused. Gohan had to explain to her the principle of how scions turn into great apes. Bulma suddenly realized it and promised him that she would take time to make the Blue's Wave Beam launch. Gohan asked, Aunt Bulma, is the energy of that spaceship full? Bulma said, not yet, but it has reached 80%, almost. Gohan said, the charging of the spaceship can be put aside for now, and let's study the Blue's Wave Beam launcher first. Bulma was stunned and said, why? Gohan smiled and said, 80% of the energy is enough, and I have now found a better way. You can focus on studying the launcher and the time machine. Have found a better way? How can there be a way to replace the spaceship? Bulma didn't understand, but she didn't ask much. Not long after lunch, Videl came again. This time, Gohan didn't teach her anything but let her practice Bokujutsu on the grass by herself. Videl didn't say anything. She smiled and looked at Gohan, then went to practice happily. Gohan didn't waste time. He went into the gravity room, adjusted the gravity to 500 times, and did 1,000 push-ups with one finger to warm up. Then he began to practice for more than 2 hours every day. 2 hours passed quickly, and when he came out of the gravity room, Videl had gone. The people waiting for him had been replaced by Supreme Kai and Kibito. As soon as they met, Supreme Kai smiled and said, Mr. Gohan, we meet again. Well, hello, Gohan greeted them with a smile. Then he took Supreme Kai and Kibito to a dessert shop and asked the robots to serve some desserts and iced drinks. They ate and talked. Originally, Supreme Kai and Kibito didn't want to eat these mortal foods, but they couldn't resist Gohan's enthusiasm, so they took a small taste and couldn't stop. Gohan looked at their ignorant expressions and nodded with satisfaction, thinking that the food on Earth is the best in the universe, proven by the praise of the god of destruction. Looking at them, Gohan smiled and said, Supreme Kai, what do you want to talk to me about? Supreme Kai wiped the cream from the corner of his mouth in a panic and quickly regained his composure. Then he said, I said last night that I want to make friends with Mr. Gohan. Gohan looked at him meaningfully, and then said, Supreme Kai, did you do your homework yesterday? What do you mean? Supreme Kai asked in surprise. It's very simple. Supreme Kai didn't even know my name last night. Supreme Kai had an awkward smile on his face, and there was no dignity of a god left. Seeing Supreme Kai's embarrassment, Gohan continued to expose him and said with a smile, It is my honor to be friends with Supreme Kai. I was too sleepy last night. I'm sorry. Supreme Kai was flattered. Gohan was not like this last night. He was a little scared by his aloof look. He didn't expect him to be so kind today. It's okay, rest is also important. Haha, right? Well, since we are friends, I treated you to such delicious food. Why don't you show some appreciation? For example, give me a gift to show your appreciation? Gohan said with a laugh. Ha! Supreme Kai and Kibito were confused for a moment. A greeting gift? What is that? Do mortals have to exchange greeting gifts when they meet? Well, it seems to be true when you think about it. There is a saying in the world called reciprocity, which is probably what it means. Chapter 34. But what should they give him? Supreme Kai was in a dilemma. As Supreme Kai, he had too many things in his hands. Ahem. Gohan coughed and then said, Supreme Kai, to be honest, I want to learn your attendant Kibito's teleportation. Well? Supreme Kai and Kibito were stunned, and then shocked at the same time. They didn't expect that Gohan actually knew Kibito's name and knew about his signature move. He had only seen Kibito use teleportation twice. How was this possible? Moreover, they didn't remember introducing Kibito's name. So, there was only one conclusion. Gohan in front of them actually knew of their existence a long time ago. It was really terrifying to think about it. Who is the real Kai here? Although he was shocked, Supreme Kai quickly recovered and said, Mr. Gohan, I'm afraid that won't work. It's not that Kibito is unwilling to teach you, but his teleportation has limitations. It can't be learned by anyone other than Supreme Kai's attendant. There is such a thing? Gohan asked in surprise. In fact, he had been coveting this skill of Kibito's. Kibito's teleportation and Yardrat's teleportation are not at the same level. Yardrat's teleportation needs to lock onto the target's ki to be performed. And Kibito's teleportation has no such limitation at all. Kibito's teleportation does not need to lock onto the target's ki at all. As long as there is a destination, he can teleport there. In other words, Kibito's teleportation can instantly go to any planet or any place under the jurisdiction of Supreme Kai. It can be said to be a true divine skill. But it can't be learned? This is disappointing. Gohan suddenly felt that he had missed a $1 trillion opportunity in an instant. Alas, what a pity, what a pity. Supreme Kai said, well, yes, this is a divine skill. It cannot be performed without God Ki on your body. God Ki? Gohan's eyes lit up and then he asked, do you mean that I can learn it if I have God Ki? He did know a way to possess God Ki, but it was too difficult for him now. Supreme Kai said, this is just one of the requirements, there are other requirements. Gohan said helplessly, well, forget it, it seems that I am not destined to learn it. Let's see if there is another chance in the future. Supreme Kai continued, if Mr. Gohan wants to learn teleportation, I know there is a planet that has this skill. Although it is not as powerful as Kibito's teleportation, it is still pretty good. Gohan said, you are talking about the skill of Yardrat, I know that. Supreme Kai said, I didn't expect Mr. Gohan to know the existence of Yardrat. To be honest with you, my late father knew this move, so I know Yardrat. Supreme Kai suddenly realized, oh, I see, that's why. Then, Gohan asked the robot to serve some new food and, while urging Supreme Kai to eat quickly, continued to ask. Supreme Kai, what do you think is the hardest metal in the universe? Supreme Kai said, the hardest metal? Well, it should be Katchin steel. This metal should be the hardest in the universe. Oh? Can you show it to me? Yes, of course. Supreme Kai said, stretching out his hand and swiping in the air, a fist-sized black Rubik's Cube appeared in his palm. Here. He handed the Katchin steel to Gohan. Gohan took it and found that this fist-sized piece of Katchin steel actually weighed several hundred kilograms. The density was too ridiculous. He flicked it with his fingers and it made a dull sound. It was indeed very hard. He wondered if this kind of metal could be useful to Bulma. Well, it looks good. Supreme Kai, can you give me some more? I want to study this metal. Gohan said. Of course you can. I'll give it to you later. If I take it out now, the store might collapse. Well, okay, thank you, Supreme Kai. No, it's my duty as a friend. It's just a small favor. Supreme Kai, what is the sharpest sword in the universe? Do you know? Supreme Kai thought for a moment and replied, well, the sharpest sword in the universe should be the Z-sword in the Holy Land. Mr. Gohan wouldn't want this sword too, right? Gohan laughed and said, "Ha ha ha, you saw through it. You have a sharp eye. I admire you." Supreme Kai said, "To be honest with you, Mr. Gohan, even if I wanted to give you this sword, I am powerless." Gohan asked knowingly, "Why?" Supreme Kai smiled bitterly and said, "To be honest, although this sword is now on Kaioshin planet, it has been sealed for more than 70 million years. No one can pull it out. How is it possible? I don't believe it." Gohan said directly. Supreme Kai said, "Mr. Gohan, I really didn't lie to you. Our previous Kais have tried to pull out this sealed sword, but no Kai could succeed." Kibito on the side also said, "Yes, I can prove this point, because I also tried to pull out the Z sword, but I couldn't pull it out." Supreme Kai also tried to pull it out, but there was no movement at all. So it is impossible for anyone to pull out the sword. Gohan laughed and said, "Have you ever thought about a question?" What's the problem?" Kibito asked. "Your power is too weak to pull out this Z sword." "Well..." Supreme Kai. Kibito. The two were speechless. "Can you please not be so direct?" They felt like they were about to suffocate. Gohan said with a solemn oath, "Well, I am willing to help you. I can definitely pull out this sword." Kibito immediately became anxious. "I don't believe it, this is impossible." Not to mention that he didn't believe it, even Supreme Kai didn't believe it. You can say that he is weak, but there is no shortage of strong people among the previous Supreme Kais, and it's not like those Kais haven't tried to pull out the Z sword. The East Kais, the West Kais, the South Kais, the North Kais. One after another. He doesn't know how many Kais have tried to pull out this sword, but they all failed. So it must have nothing to do with strength. Gohan twisted his mouth, and the crooked mouth smiled and said, "How about we make a bet? If I can pull out the Z sword, then it will be mine." The Supreme Kai raised his eyebrows and said seriously, "What if you can't pull it out?" "If I can't pull it out, you can ask me for one favor," Gohan said firmly. "Okay, that's a deal then." Supreme Kai smiled, his heart filled with joy. He firmly believed that Gohan would never be able to pull out the Z sword. In other words, Gohan would have to owe them a favor in the future. He could have a good dream just thinking about such a strong man being ordered by him. What's there to be afraid of, Majin Buu? Come on, Majin Buu. Oh, even if Gohan really pulled out the sword, so what? Just give it to him as a gift. Anyway, the Z sword has been sealed in the Holy Land for more than 70 million years, and it doesn't matter whether it's there or not. The key is that he really wants to see what this sword looks like. Is it really the world's #1 sword? However, until now, Supreme Kai and Kibito still don't believe that Gohan can pull out the sword. A bet, both parties are happy. Chapter 35. A mere Z sword, how can he not be able to pull it out? Gohan thought confidently. With his current strength, he is much stronger than the Gohan who stopped his training after the Cell Saga and had a hard time transforming back to Super Saiyan 2. There is no reason why that guy could pull it out, but he can't. If that's the case, then why is he still working hard to practice? It's better to just give up. Gohan smiled and said, "It's a deal." Supreme Kai and Kibito also ate their food happily, their mental abacus jingling. After a while, Supreme Kai asked, "When does Mr. Gohan plan to pull out the Z sword? Why are these two guys so anxious?" Gohan looked at them and smiled inwardly, "I'll go in a while." Then he said, "Supreme Kai, besides the Z sword, do you have any other swords? My brother also wants a sword." Supreme Kai thought of Trunks and said, "Of course, I have another sword here. It's called the Brave Sword. This sword can bring great confidence and courage to the user. It is also a rare and good sword. He will definitely like it." Supreme Kai spread out his right hand, and a long sword appeared in his hand. "Here." He handed it to Gohan. Gohan took the sword and pulled it out of the scabbard with a clang. "Good sword, it is indeed a good sword." The long sword was very sharp, shining with a cold light. Gohan liked it at first sight and thought Trunks would also like it. Although he had asked for a sword from King Kai before, he has not received it yet. And what Supreme Kai took out must be more advanced than what King Kai would have provided, right? There is no need to wait for that sword. Clang! The long sword returned to its sheath. Gohan smiled and said, "Thank you, Supreme Kai." Then he put away the brave sword. A moment later, Supreme Kai gave him a large piece of Kachin steel, which weighed several tons. Gohan asked Supreme Kai and Kibito to wait for him in the dessert shop, and he took the long sword and Kachin steel to find Bulma. Seeing Gohan carrying a large piece of metal back, Bulma asked curiously, "Gohan, what is this?" Gohan answered truthfully, "This is what I asked for from Supreme Kai. It is said to be the hardest metal in the universe." He put the Kachin steel in the yard. The ground suddenly sank a lot, and Bulma was stunned. The hardest metal? Bulma walked up curiously and knocked on it, causing her hand to tremble with pain. Hiss! She gasped and said, "I've never seen such a material before. There shouldn't be such a thing on Earth." Gohan said, "This metal is not only hard but also very dense. A piece as big as a fist weighs 500 to 600 kilograms. Bulma's eyes lit up, as if she had discovered a new world. New things always arouse her interest. Walking into the house, Gohan put the long sword in his hand on the table and said, "Aunt Bulma, where is Trunks? This sword is for him." Bulma couldn't help her curiosity and wanted to pick up the sword on the table, but after trying for a long time, the brave sword didn't move at all. She panted and said, "Trunks went to East City to help." Went to East City? Why did he go to East City? Gohan asked curiously. Bulma explained, "It's like this. Videl called just now and said that a bad incident happened in a town in East City, and she was having a hard time dealing with it, so she wanted to ask you for help. But you have guests here, so I let Trunks go." Gohan! What's the matter? Do you have her contact information? Why don't I have any? Oh, because I don't have a phone, that's fine. A case that Videl can't handle? What happened? Gohan frowned and said, "Among ordinary people, Videl's fighting power is already at the ceiling. If even she can't handle it, there won't be any aliens coming to cause trouble, right?" Bulma said, "It is said that the mayor's daughter was kidnapped by a 100-meter-tall gorilla. The gorilla grabbed the mayor's daughter and climbed to the roof of a building, confronting the kingdom's power." Gohan! What kind of familiar plot is this? King Kong? Gohan rolled his eyes and then said, "Since Trunks has gone, this little gorilla can't cause any trouble. Aunt Bulma, please hand this sword to him. I'm going to Kaioshin Planet with Supreme Kai now." Bulma was stunned and said, "Go to Kaioshin Planet? Then when will you come back?" "It can be as short as 1 day or as long as 2 or 3 days. Well, that's fine." So, Gohan took Kibito's ride and went directly to the Supreme Kai realm. Thus, Gohan became the first mortal to set foot on the Holy Land of the Supreme Kai realm in tens of millions of years. In the Supreme Kai realm, the sky was as blue as a wash, the spiritual plants were lush and green, and the breeze blowing in the face was full of rich spiritual energy. Gohan felt that the pores of his body were opening, greedily absorbing the fresh air. With such a rich spiritual blessing, even mortals living here can prolong their lives, and practitioners can achieve twice the result with half the effort. It is worthy of being the Holy Land of God. A town in East City. A gorilla hundreds of meters tall was holding a little girl in his hand, squatting on the roof of a building, staring at the helicopters flying in the sky with fierce eyes. In his eyes, these helicopters were like flies that annoyed him. Humph! What's the matter? It just fell in love with a little human girl. Is there anything wrong with wanting her to be his wife? Hasn't freedom of love been advocated for a long time? The gorilla was mad at the annoying humans. He didn't understand at all. The little girl in the gorilla's hand looked no more than 13 or 14 years old, with black shoulder-length hair, 2 big eyes blinking, and she looked very beautiful. At this time, the little girl was crying with tears in her eyes, looking pitiful. But she was still trying to communicate with the gorilla. "Mr. Gorilla, please let me go. okay? You see, there is such a big difference in our size, it is really not suitable, I beg you. The gorilla spoke in human language, and the fishy smell from its mouth almost made the little girl faint. No, no, my father said that we must be brave enough to pursue true love. I will not give up. I fell in love with you at first sight and want you to be my wife. I will love you well. I know, you are testing my love right now, right? Whoa, is it possible that your father wants you to pursue a female gorilla? I am a human, we are not even of the same species, how can we be together? Please let me go, we really have no future. Although the little girl is young, she speaks clearly, and although she speaks with a sad tone, she is unusually calm. But the gorilla still shook his head and said, my dad also said that true love can transcend age boundaries and species. I believe you will be moved by me in the future. The little girl rolled her eyes and cursed the stupid gorilla in her heart. But she said, you are so old and I am so young, we can't have children. Ha? Why? You are lying to me. The gorilla was surprised. Why would I lie to you? Chapter 36. As for why they couldn't have children, she didn't know. But she remembered something that happened a long time ago. Her eldest brother once told her that if she wanted to have children, she had to sleep in the same bed with a man. Otherwise, it was impossible to have children. The gorilla was so big and she was so small, how could they sleep in the same bed? So it was impossible to have children. Thinking of some past events, the girl's face couldn't help but look a little gloomy. At this moment, a voice came from the helicopter. Lily, can you hear me? Lily, it's Daddy. Daddy is here to save you, don't be afraid, Daddy will save you. A gray-haired man was shouting with a megaphone in a hurry. Dad? The girl looked up at the helicopter in the sky. Although she didn't know which helicopter the voice came from, a warm current instantly spread throughout her body, and she felt less scared. Although this man was not her biological father, he treated her as his own daughter and loved her very much. Yes, this was her adoptive father, the mayor. Did you hear that? My dad is here to save me. Lily said to the gorilla. The gorilla answered irrelevantly, with a persistent look on his face, are you really unwilling to be my wife? Lily shook her head very firmly, I don't want to, please let me go, okay? If you let me go, I will beg them to let you leave here safely. No, I will take you away even if you don't want me to. You don't have the final say. The gorilla said as he grabbed Lily and stood up. It was huge, as tall as a whole building. When it stood up, the whole building creaked and shook. The gorilla looked at the helicopter flying in the sky with an unhappy look on his face. What a nasty fly! It held Lily in one hand and slapped at the helicopter in the sky with the other hand. The huge palm slapped down like a sky curtain, and the helicopters, seeing the situation was not good, quickly fled. Then, the gorilla jumped down from the roof and strode away. Boom! 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 Wherever it passed, it left deep footprints, and the sound of boom boom shook the earth. It even trampled several humans to death. How could the helicopters in the sky let it leave with the hostage like this? They all chased after it. Seeing that these humans were so ignorant, the gorilla got angry. Roar! It roared loudly and slapped at the helicopters frantically. Unfortunately, one helicopter was hit in the tail and fell from the sky with thick smoke. It's bad. Seeing this, Videl, who was standing on the roof of a building, paced back and forth anxiously. Although she had learned Bokujutsu, her flying speed was not fast, and the strength gap was too great. Even if she caught up, she would not be able to beat this huge gorilla. Strange, why hasn't Trunks arrived after so long? Did something happen on the way and he was delayed? Watching the plane fall with thick smoke, Videl became more and more anxious. At this moment, a figure with a flaming aura pierced into the battlefield from afar. Trunks finally arrived. Phew, I'm finally here. Videl breathed a sigh of relief. Trunks flashed and appeared under the falling helicopter. He held the plane with both hands and helped it land safely, then tore off the helicopter door with one hand and disappeared again. The pilot jumped out of the plane and stared in the direction where Trunks left, shocked beyond words. Is this man a man or a god? At this time, Videl held the microphone in her hand and shouted. Attention all action teams, our reinforcements have arrived, please stop the rescue operation, and leave it to him to handle. Videl knew that Gohan and Trunks were both super soldiers, and their methods were incredibly powerful. Don't even think about helping them, just don't go up to make trouble, otherwise, it will only affect the difficulty of the rescue and increase casualties. The rescue team really obeyed the order, moved aside, and no longer followed the gorilla. Their original mission was to delay time. Looking at such a big gorilla, they were also scared to follow. Trunks almost became a white light, and instantly blocked the gorilla in front of it. Seeing that a human as small as a mouse dared to block it, the running gorilla's eyes flashed with a fierce light, and the huge palm slapped at it like a fly. No! Lily shouted. But the gorilla would never listen to her, and attacked without mercy. He attacked with all his strength. He wanted to kill the person who blocked his way. Bang! A shocking scene happened. The one that flew backward was the huge gorilla, its butt turned upside down in the sky, and it rolled on the ground like a gourd. How could this be? The gorilla, which was hundreds of meters tall, turned over and sat up, looking at Trunks standing motionless in the sky with a look of shock. This kid was not killed by its palm. Instead, his arm bones were smashed to pieces. How is this possible? Just its palm alone is several times larger than that kid's. This is unreasonable, totally unreasonable. Its father had never told it such a thing. Roar! Beasts are beasts after all, and their intelligence is limited. The intense pain in its arm aroused its ferocity, and it roared loudly at Trunks. Lily, who was dizzy and almost fainted from this, was also stunned when she looked at Trunks. This boy was actually fine, but the gorilla was injured? It's incredible. Suddenly, hope ignited in Lily's eyes. Trunks stood high in the air, looking at the crazy gorilla, and said coldly, "Big guy, it's useless to roar. You smell of blood. You killed many people, so I will kill you too. Roar, die, die." The gorilla had already fallen into madness, and didn't care about these things. He rushed towards Trunks again. But even so, he still held Lily tightly in his hand and didn't let go. No one knew where he got such a deep obsession. The huge gorilla came running, and every step he took was earth-shaking, and dust flew behind him. Trunks combined his middle finger and index finger, condensed energy, and instantly pointed it out. A beam of energy shot out from his fingertips and instantly blew up the gorilla's head. The head exploded, the gorilla's legs became weak, and his body fell forward. Because it was running, due to inertia, it held Lily's hand tightly and swung it forward suddenly, as if it was throwing Lily out with force. Ah! Lily was so scared that she closed her eyes and screamed miserably. Trunks rushed out and intercepted Lily in an instant. Don't shout! Lily opened her closed eyes and found herself lying in Trunks' arms, her face suddenly turning red. You are safe now. I have killed the gorilla, Trunks said. Thank you, Lily said, secretly looking up at Trunks' face. Don't thank me, I'm just here to help my sister, Trunks said, holding Lily in his arms and flying towards Videl. Soon, Trunks found Videl and put Lily down. Sister Videl, did I live up to your expectations and complete the mission? Trunks said with a smile. Videl looked at Lily, who was intact, and then smiled and said, Thank you, Trunks. If it weren't for you, we wouldn't know what to do. It's a small matter. How about this, I'll treat you to a nice meal, and then I'll apply for a bonus from the police station for you. Although I know you definitely don't need this little money, this is the only thing I can do. What's more, this is the money you earned yourself. Okay, then I'm going to have a big meal, Trunks said with a smile. Well, can I go to dinner with you? I'll pay, Lily said hesitantly. Chapter 37. In the Supreme Kai planet. Gohan, Supreme Kai, and Kibito flew side by side to the place where the Z-Sword was sealed. Kibito flew in the middle with his hands behind his back and said with a somewhat arrogant expression. The sacred world of the Kai is the holy land of the gods. Even the kings Kai and the great Kai have never been here, let alone humans. Mr. Gohan is the first human to come here. Gohan smiled and said nothing, letting Kibito finish his pretense, otherwise, he would be very uncomfortable. Besides, doesn't this better reflect his awesomeness? The Supreme Kai flying on the right side of Kibito said, Kibito is right, but Gohan is not an ordinary human. It is a blessing for us that he came to the sacred world of Kai. Gohan, flying on the left side of Kibito, smiled and said, the sacred world of Kai is worthy of being the holy land of the gods. The scenery is very beautiful, the spiritual energy is abundant, and the area is vast and boundless, but it's a pity. What a pity! Kibito and Supreme Kai were puzzled. Supreme Kai asked the question, what a pity? Gohan smiled and said, such a wide place, with such abundant spiritual energy, but it's all wasteland. It would be great if it could be used to grow crops. With such abundant spiritual nourishment, the food grown must be very delicious. Even the meat of farmed animals would be sweeter. I am drooling just thinking about it. Supreme Kai, why don't you consider it? Kibito? From what Gohan said, is he going to persuade them to switch to farming and become breeders? Come on, they are the dignified Supreme Kai in attendance. They are the noblest and greatest gods in the universe. Asking them to farm? This joke is not funny at all. Supreme Kai responded awkwardly, forget it, forget it. Oh, I knew it, that's why I said it's a pity, such a good place is wasted. Mr. Gohan, farming in a holy place is a blasphemy to the gods, Kibito said. No, this is called developing new business and making perfect use of resources. The three flew for a while, and a huge lake appeared in front of them. In the middle of the lake stood a mountain, with the top of the mountain dozens of meters above the water. The three people descended from the sky and landed on the top of the mountain. The top of the mountain is not wide, with an area of only about 5 or 6 square meters, but it is very flat and overgrown with green grass. Looking up, Gohan found the sealed Z-sword in the middle of the mountaintop. It is called the Z-sword, but in fact, only the hilt is exposed. Because the sword's body is entirely inserted into the soil, he can't see it at all. The group stepped on the soft grass and came to the side of the Z-sword. Supreme Kai pointed at the hilt and said, Mr. Gohan, this is the Z-sword. Gohan squatted down and observed carefully. Supreme Kai continued, this sword has been sealed here for more than 70 million years. As far as I know, no one has been able to pull out this sword. Since Mr. Gohan wants this sword, let's try to see if he can pull it out. It is rumored that whoever pulls out the Z-sword will gain immense power and become the most powerful warrior in the universe. If Mr. Gohan can't pull it out, then you have to abide by the agreement. Gohan made an OK sign, stared at the Z-sword, and sighed, it's been 70 million years, and the hilt is still as good as new. It seems that the old Supreme Kai was also a clean freak. What? Supreme Kai said, not understanding what this meant. Okay, please stand aside, I'll give it a try, Gohan said, standing up. Okay. Supreme Kai and Kibito stepped aside tactfully, looking like they were going to enjoy the show. Gohan knew that he probably couldn't pull out the sword in his normal state, so he didn't say anything and turned into a Super Saiyan. With a boom, in an instant, the blonde and green-eyed man, with rage gushing out, created a whirlwind on the ground. Is this a Super Saiyan? Such strong energy. Although not as powerful as last night's Great Ape transformation, it is still very powerful. The two were surprised. This was also the first time they saw a Super Saiyan. It was very novel. Gohan grinned and stood firm in front of the hilt. He stretched his muscles and bones, then bent down, firmly grasped the hilt, and exerted force with both arms. Ha! In just 1 or 2 seconds, the ground cracked, and the Supreme Kai sword was pulled up more than 20 centimeters. This? Supreme Kai was shocked. How is this possible? Kibito was stunned. How could the Z-sword, which had not been pulled out for 70 million years, be pulled out so easily? Damn it, don't they have any dignity? Supreme Kai and Kibito felt like they were in a dream, it was too unreal. Gohan did it once and for all, and pulled up with both arms, and the whole Z-sword was pulled out. It was much easier than he imagined. But he had to admit that the sword was heavy. If the sword that Supreme Kai gave to Trunks weighed 1 kilogram, then the weight of this Z-sword was estimated to be more than 10,000 kilograms. Even with Gohan's amazing arm strength, it was not so smooth to use. It was actually pulled out. Incredible. Supreme Kai was stunned, and he couldn't help but doubt his life. Kibito quickly asked, "Mr. Gohan, how is it? Did you feel that powerful force?" "No, but I think this sword is really heavy," Gohan said frankly. "How heavy can a sword be?" said Kibito. "Don't believe it? Why don't you try it?" Gohan said as he grabbed the blade with one hand and handed it to Kibito with a playful smile on his face. "Okay, I'll try." Kibito didn't care and stretched out his hand to hold the hilt of the Z-sword. Seeing him holding the hilt, Gohan loosened his hand. The huge weight of the Z-sword suddenly fell on Kibito's hand. Kibito let out a scream, "Ah," and the Z-sword slammed to the ground. The ground sank deeply, and the whole mountain trembled, looking like it would collapse at any moment. Kibito's face turned pale because his arm was directly dislocated. The Supreme Kai was completely stunned. What kind of heaven-defying weight is this? It's too outrageous. Kibito quickly cast a recovery spell on himself, straightened his arm, and restored it to normal. Looking at the Z-sword sunk into the ground, Kibito's face was full of fear, and he didn't dare to pick up the sword again. Gohan smiled and said, "I said it was a bit heavy, but you didn't believe it." As he said that, he bent down and picked up the sword, otherwise the mountain would be crushed before long. "Supreme Kai, do you want to try it too?" Gohan looked at Supreme Kai and asked. Supreme Kai shook his head like a rattle. Forget it, I won't try it." What a joke, his strength is only equal to Kibito's. It's not like he didn't see Kibito's miserable condition, he didn't want to be the next clown. "Ha ha ha, alright." Gohan laughed, put the sword on his shoulder, and continued. "Supreme Kai, I want to ask you a question." "What's the problem?" Gohan pointed to the mountain under his feet and said, "You can't pull out the sword. Why don't you try to blow up this mountain? If you blow up this mountain, won't the sword come out?" Supreme Kai shook his head and said, "No, Mr. Gohan, a senior has thought of this method before, but this lake is a large formation that protects this mountain and this Z-sword. If we want to destroy the mountain violently, the lake will attack." "Oh, I see." Gohan was surprised. He looked at the huge lake under his feet in surprise. He didn't expect that there was such a secret hidden in it. Chapter 38. But this makes sense. Otherwise, after so many years, it is impossible that all the Supreme Kai are fools. "Let's leave here first," Gohan said, floating up. "Well, okay," Supreme Kai replied and flew up as well. Kibito followed closely behind. The three flew high into the sky. Driven by curiosity, Gohan condensed an energy bomb and smashed it down at the sealed place. Before Supreme Kai and Kibito could react, the energy bomb was bounced back in a strange way. "Wow, that's interesting." Gohan smiled and slapped the energy ball away. The energy ball whizzed away and exploded in the distance with a bang, raising a huge mushroom cloud. Supreme Kai. Kibito. The two of them thought at the same time that the Saiyans were indeed terrifying. How long will it take to clean up the Supreme Kai realm? "Mr. Gohan, please take it easy. The Holy Land cannot stand attacks like this," Supreme Kai said with some pain. "Haha, okay." After the three of them flew to an open space, Supreme Kai and Kibito were particularly curious about how awesome the sword, which is known as the best in the universe, was. At this time, Gohan danced with the sword so vigorously that Supreme Kai and Kibito were terrified. Because they had just witnessed the incredible weight of the Z-sword. Now seeing Gohan dancing with the sword so easily, they said in their hearts that the Saiyans were too perverted. After playing with the sword for a while, Gohan suddenly felt bored. He turned into a Super Saiyan with a bang. Then, he held the hilt of the sword with one hand and the blade with the other, and twisted it with both hands. Looking at his grinning appearance, Supreme Kai asked curiously, "Mr. Gohan, what are you doing?" Gohan stopped what he was doing, turned around, and said, I want to try to see if I can twist it off. Well. Hearing his words, Supreme Kai and Kibito were shocked. Sure enough, their previous judgment was correct. Scions are terrible saboteurs. He had just obtained the universe's #1 sword not long ago, and he was thinking about how to break it. What a sin! I just don't believe it, Gohan muttered, clenched his fists, and turned into a Super Saiyan 2. Suddenly, his aura soared to the sky, his golden hair stood upright, a fringe of bangs hung down in front of his forehead, and lightning swirled all over his body, making a crackling sound. He instantly became more cold and domineering, and his aura changed drastically. Supreme Kai and Kibito wanted to talk, but when they saw Gohan's transformation, they swallowed their saliva and held back what they wanted to say. Gohan picked up the Z sword again, veins popping in his hands, and then he twisted it hard. There was a clang sound. Supreme Kai and Kibito almost jumped up when they heard the sound. Broken? Really broken? Are you crazy? How could the most powerful sword in the universe break like this? How is this possible? Isn't this the most powerful sword in the universe? Oh my god. Supreme Kai and Kibito stared at the sword in Gohan's hand, broken into 2 sections, their mouths open so wide that they could fit a whole egg in them. Oh, it's perfect, Gohan said happily, throwing the 2 broken pieces to the ground. Supreme Kai, the quality of this Supreme Kai sword is really not that good, and you still brag that it is the strongest sword in the universe. No, I didn't, Supreme Kai stuttered, his mind full of images of the broken sword. At this moment, Gohan had already caught a glimpse of old Supreme Kai appearing behind Supreme Kai and Kibito. Gohan couldn't help but twist his mouth. Here it comes, the legendary opportunity and cheats have finally arrived as promised. Old Supreme Kai said slowly, it's not like that. The voice was light and fluttering, as if a ghost was whispering. A voice suddenly sounded behind them, and Supreme Kai and Kibito felt a chill. They screamed in fear and froze in place. Supreme Kai and Kibito turned around and saw the old Supreme Kai who looked like a skeleton. Staring at the old Supreme Kai in the Supreme Kai uniform, Supreme Kai and Kibito were a little doubtful. Supreme Kai asked nervously, Sir, who are you? The old Supreme Kai clapped his hands, stretched his body, and then panted, Me, I am the Supreme Kai from 15 generations ago. The Supreme Kai from 15 generations ago? Supreme Kai and Kibito were dumbfounded. The Supreme Kai from 15 generations ago, if we trace back the time, it has been 70 to 80 million years. How long is this history? They had no idea about these things. And where did this old Supreme Kai who claimed to be from 15 generations ago come from? It is still a mystery. The old Supreme Kai continued. A long time ago, there was a very evil and powerful guy who was afraid of my ability and sealed me inside the Z-Sword. Supreme Kai asked, Old man, is it Majin Buu? The old Supreme Kai recalled the past and continued, It's not Majin Buu. That was an evil guy who was countless times more terrifying than Majin Buu. There is actually a villain more terrifying than Majin Buu? So, what happened later, old man? Supreme Kai asked in surprise. The old Supreme Kai coughed and said, Then he sealed me in the sword, and I don't know what happened after that. After listening to the conversation between the 2 Supreme Kai, Kibito became excited. So, the ancestor is a very powerful Kai, and the bad guys were afraid of you, so they sealed you up. Doesn't that mean that the ancestor is much more powerful than Majin Buu? The old Supreme Kai put his hands behind his back and looked very arrogant. What he was afraid of was not my power, but my ability. I have a very scary ability. What is it? What kind of terrible ability is it? The eyes of Supreme Kai and Kibito were shining. The old ancestor was so powerful, and they were proud of it. The old Supreme Kai snorted coldly, looked at them with some dissatisfaction, and said, Humph, I won't tell you. You really disappoint me. You let me be sealed in the sword for more than 70 million years and couldn't save me. In the end, it was actually a human who let me out. This is really absurd. Supreme Kai and Kibito stood up like good kids, lowering their heads in shame. The ancestor was right, they were too useless to save him. The old Supreme Kai tilted his head, looked at Gohan who was having fun, waved his hand, and said, "You let me out, right? Come here." Gohan smiled and walked over and said, "It was me, I accidentally broke the sword." Supreme Kai and Kibito glanced at him, and when they saw old Supreme Kai looking over, they lowered their heads in a hurry. Old Supreme Kai looked at Gohan and exclaimed, "It's amazing. I didn't expect that after tens of millions of years, humans have become so powerful." "Not bad. Really not bad." Gohan asked knowingly, "Old sir, what is the terrible ability you just mentioned?" Old Supreme Kai said, "If those two unworthy descendants asked me, I wouldn't tell them, but you are my savior, so it's okay to tell you. My terrifying ability is that no matter how powerful a person is, I can inspire his potential, let him surpass his limits, and become the most powerful warrior in the universe." Gohan said, "Wow, can that help me inspire my potential? It sounds like it's amazing, but I don't know if it's true." Old Supreme Kai looked Gohan up and down and then said, "How can it be false? You actually doubt my ability? Humph, well, since you saved me, I will reluctantly help you. Okay, just stand here and don't move. You two, get out of here right now." He looked at Supreme Kai and Kibito and shouted, "Yes, old ancestor." Supreme Kai and Kibito walked to the side dejectedly, whispering something to each other. Old Supreme Kai began to perform a strange and bizarre ritual around Gohan. Chapter 39. The awakening ceremony was conducted by Old Kai alone. For 5 hours, Gohan felt numb watching Old Kai jumping around him. He was a little worried that Old Kai would fall apart after 5 hours of jumping. This really didn't look like an easy job. Old Kai's body would be out of breath when he moved, so it was indeed a huge challenge for him to jump for 5 hours in a row. After watching for 5 hours, Supreme Kai and Kibito were completely stunned, but they thought it would be rude to just run away. After all, this was the ancestor from 15 generations ago. Finally, Supreme Kai couldn't stand it anymore and asked, "Ancestor, how long will this ceremony take?" Old Kai continued to beat a steady rhythm around Gohan and responded unhappily, "Shut up, this is a very important ceremony, don't interrupt. The whole process takes 5 hours, and it takes 20 hours to increase the strength." "Well, Old Kai, if it is 5 hours, I think it has exceeded the time limit," Supreme Kai said with some trepidation. "Huh?" Old Kai paused, "Has it been 5 hours?" "Yes, Old Kai." Supreme Kai wiped the sweat off his forehead and nodded. Kibito beside him also echoed, "Yes, Old Kai, it has been more than 5 hours. Old Kai scratched his head and laughed, "Ha ha ha, it turns out that the time has exceeded. I am old and can't remember the time clearly." Gohan. "Ahem, young man, sit down." "Old Kai, my name is Gohan, just call me Gohan," Gohan said with a dry mouth. He shook his numb legs and sat down. Because he was afraid of disturbing the awakening ceremony, he had not spoken for 5 hours, and his mouth was very dry. "Sit still and don't talk," Old Kai said, and he also sat down cross-legged opposite Gohan, mumbling a completely incomprehensible spell. At this time, Gohan especially missed the way the great elder of Namek stimulated his potential. That was really simple, just pressing his hand on your head. Compared to now, it's the difference between simple difficulty and hellish difficulty. Supreme Kai and Kibito didn't dare to speak either. They stood beside him like two javelins, neither sitting nor walking, which was even more tormenting than Gohan. Just like that, he didn't know how many hours passed. Gohan felt sleepy and fell asleep with his eyes closed. The wonderful spell of Old Kai seemed to have turned into a wonderful lullaby, making him sleep particularly soundly. Tick. 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 The sound of water drops falling into a lake echoed in his mind. Ripples spread out in his heart. Gohan opened his eyes and woke up from his deep sleep. He felt his body was more comfortable than ever before, and his mood was more relaxed and quiet than ever before. He looked at Old Kai who was still sleeping soundly in front of him and stood up with a smile. He turned his head and saw Supreme Kai and Kibito who were also looking at him. Gohan walked toward the two of them. Seeing Gohan coming, Supreme Kai asked in a low voice, "Mr. Gohan, how do you feel? Is there any difference?" "Difference?" Gohan clenched his fist. In fact, Gohan did not feel any difference, but now he felt relaxed all over, as if his mind had been cleansed, and his whole person was sublimated. Gohan said, "It is hard to say what the difference is. If I have to say, my mentality is more peaceful and natural, and I feel unrestrained." I don't quite understand either. Let's wait until the ancestor wakes up and ask him, Supreme Kai said with a smile. Kibito looked at Gohan without saying anything. He always felt that Gohan was particularly mysterious and ethereal now. He couldn't see through him anymore. Gohan was clearly in front of him, but he felt that he was far away. Mr. Gohan, this is for you, Supreme Kai said, and a long sword appeared out of thin air in his hand. It was the Z-sword, and he handed it to Gohan. Supreme Kai, have you fixed it? Gohan took the sword and asked in surprise. Hey, why is it so light? The Z-sword was no longer as heavy as before. Supreme Kai smiled and said, while you were stimulating your potential, I had nothing to do, so I reforged the Z-sword. I didn't expect that after the ancestor was released from the sword, the whole sword became much lighter. After reforging, the sword has been restored to its original state, and is even sharper than before. Our previous bet still stands, so this sword will now be returned to Mr. Gohan. Then thank you, Supreme Kai. Gohan was not polite and put away the Z-sword. Perhaps because of their conversation, the old Supreme Kai woke up slowly. He looked around blankly and then wondered, I actually fell asleep? I didn't expect that after sleeping in the sword for tens of millions of years, I am still very sleepy. My body is too weak. Supreme Kai immediately said, it's because you were too tired just now. Gohan walked up to the old Supreme Kai, bowed, and said sincerely, thank you for your hard work, old Kai. I will always remember this kindness in my heart. The old Supreme Kai stood up, then put his hands behind his back, looked up at the sky at a 45-degree angle, and said, you guys are only good at saying useless nice things. I'm already very old and I don't have many days left to live. Alas, this time I've shortened a lot of my life by helping you unleash your potential. He said with a gloomy look on his face, and a depressing aura filled the air. Gohan knew that this old actor was just acting, but Supreme Kai and Kibito believed it and were immediately worried. They kept telling the old ancestor to take care of himself and not to work too hard in the future. Gohan grinned, leaned close to the old Supreme Kai's ear, and said, Grandpa, I was planning to give you some beauty magazines, but since your body can't bear the burden, it seems that these magazines can't be given away. What? There is such a thing? Old Kai's eyes lit up and he immediately became energetic. But when he thought of his identity, his face became stern again. Ahem, I don't care about your magazines. If I want to see them, I can always use my magical powers to see the beauties in the world. Gohan spread his hands, looking very regretful. Forget it, I was going to give you some more discs. This? Old Kai frowned and said in a dilemma, since you insist on giving them to me, I can accept it with reluctance. He stretched out his hand to Gohan and asked for it. Next time, Grandpa. To show my sincerity, I will collect the best and give them to you. Ordinary ones are definitely not presentable and are totally unsuitable for your status, Gohan said solemnly with his hands on his waist. You young man, okay, remember to bring them next time. Respect the elderly and love the young, do you understand? I understand, I remember. Supreme Kai and Kibito had no idea what high-level topic the old and young were talking about. They only knew that the old man was in high spirits and very happy. It must be said that Mr. Gohan was really good at cheering up the ancestor. He even knew how to coax an old man. He was really amazing. Chapter 40. Grandpa, how can I channel that powerful force now? Gohan asked. Old Kai looked at him and said, stupid, why do you even need to ask? How do you normally transform into a Super Saiyan? Just use that method. Gohan. If I follow that guide, wouldn't I become a Super Saiyan directly? As for why old Kai knew that he could become a Super Saiyan, Gohan didn't think too much about it. It must be that old Kai knew when he drew his sword. Although old Kai was sealed in the sword, he could feel what was happening around him. This is not surprising. How to transform into a Super Saiyan? Gohan muttered, clenching his fists, anger. Ha ha. Boom. A powerful wave of air immediately gushed out, sweeping in all directions. Ah. Wow. Old Kai was the first to be blown away by the blast. Then it was Kibito and Supreme Kai. The three of them rolled in the air, falling backward into the grass dozens of meters away, leaving behind screams. As Gohan exploded, the sky was blown back by the wind. For the first time in tens of millions of years, a giant tornado appeared in the Supreme Kai realm. Hoo. Suddenly, white mist rose up, and thick smoke filled the air, soon covering an area of several kilometers. Gohan's aura spread to all the galaxies with the Supreme Kai realm as the center. Idiot, you suddenly transformed when we were so close. Old Kai was helped up by Supreme Kai and couldn't help but curse. Oh, what a powerful aura. This is too scary. Feeling Gohan's aura, Supreme Kai was shocked. Kibito also said, it is indeed a very powerful aura, but it is completely different from the violent aura of the Super Saiyan. This aura is full of justice, more like the aura of the gods. Ouch, it hurts, I didn't expect this kid's potential to be so terrifying, and he actually has such powerful energy hidden in his body. Although not as strong as that guy, it's also very scary, Old Kai said while rubbing his butt. The ancestor has actually seen an aura more powerful than this? Supreme Kai and Kibito were shocked at the same time and thought of the bad guy who sealed the ancestor. Could the ancestor be talking about that person? Old Kai patted his butt and said, you are surprised by what you have never seen. Supreme Kai and Kibito were confused. The smoke gradually dissipated, and Gohan's figure was revealed. At this moment, his whole body seemed to have rays of light flowing, but it was so simple and unpretentious. If the transformation of a Super Saiyan is ostentatious and domineering, then this transformation is restrained, low-key, and has a taste of returning to nature. At this moment, Gohan looks a little more robust than usual, and the contours of his facial features are tougher, more mature and stable. Other than that, there is not much difference from normal. Gohan waved his fist and moved it. He stretched his muscles and bones, concentrating his mind to carefully feel the changes in his body. At this moment, his state of mind was different from when he transformed into a Super Saiyan. When he transformed into a Super Saiyan, whether it was Super Saiyan 1 or Super Saiyan 2, the blood in his body was surging, his breath was violent, his emotions were excited, he was domineering, belligerent, and cold. But now it is completely different. At this moment, he only felt that his state of mind was peaceful and natural, free and casual. The feeling of being light all over and going wherever he wanted made him extremely addicted. Free to fight, free to live, free to practice. Everything is free and unrestrained. This is the so-called ultimate Gohan. Gohan muttered. Speaking of the name of this state, Gohan felt a little strange. After all, this state was named after him. Of course, it can also be called the ultimate state. HAAA. Gohan shouted, and aura surged. Suddenly, silver-white flames gushed out of his body. In this way, Gohan felt his own power more deeply. He also secretly compared it in his heart. This state is much stronger than Super Saiyan 2. And this state is the same as Super Saiyan 2, which is a balanced development in all aspects, without leaning towards any attribute. It can be said to be an all-rounder warrior. The energy consumption in this state is even less than that of Super Saiyan 2. If I don't attack, even the energy will not be consumed. It is almost the same as the normal state. This is awesome. In terms of strength, it is not much different from the golden great ape. It has been improved by about 450 times compared to the normal level, and it is an all-around improvement without any blind spots. Is this my potential? Although the golden great ape's transformation can reach 500 times, its speed is only about 300 times higher, and it consumes a lot of energy. Super Saiyan 3 can only be increased to 400 times, and its stamina cost is too much, which is a big flaw. Therefore, I can almost give up on the Super Saiyan 3 transformation. The ultimate state has more advantages. It can be said that it was an all-around crushing victory. Gohan was in a very calm mood, with a cool and clear mind, and his analysis was very logical. At this time, the three Kai came over. Gohan came back to his senses from his thoughts, looked at the three people who were a little embarrassed, and said awkwardly, sorry, I really didn't mean it. Humph, little guy, you don't know how to respect the elderly and love the young. Sooner or later, my old bones will be broken by you. Ouch, old Kai said angrily. Gohan restrained the terrifying aura on his body, returned to normal, and said, Grandpa, I'm sorry, can I give you more magazines? Well, that's pretty good. Old Kai nodded in satisfaction. Supreme Kai looked Gohan up and down and said, he hasn't become a Super Saiyan yet. I can't see any big changes. His ki is so strong, it's incredible. Old Kai choked and said, Humph, what's the point of transforming into a Super Saiyan? It's a crooked way. I just channeled the power in Gohan's body. This power originally belonged to him, so he can control it perfectly. Super Saiyans are different. This transformation is a crooked one. Using skills to enhance strength is very harmful to the body. Ahem. Gohan coughed and said, Grandpa, if you have any special skills, please teach them to me. I will help you to develop them. Don't even think about it, no. Well, I know you have, you just don't want to teach. No. Supreme Kai. Okay, no. Gohan paused. He turned to Supreme Kai and said, Lord Supreme Kai, I have heard you mention Majin Buu many times. What kind of existence is that? Can you tell me about it? Gohan knew that Kibito said that he wanted to guide Supreme Kai and move the sealed egg of Majin Buu to Supreme Kai's realm. It always feels like a time bomb on Earth. That wraps up this part of What If Reborn is Gohan in Future Timeline. Thanks so much for listening. As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well. See you in the next one.